subscribe to my channel, and also press this bell icon.
I need not go any further. I'll wait for the questions, and now I am ready for interrogation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Please give us details on your meeting with President Reagan. Did you seek any firm commitments? Did you get them?
Well, a firm commitment as to when we are going to review the basis, yes. A firm commitment that a mechanism be set for the study of our economic problems, yes. Because, as you know, the reason we have a deficit in our balance of payments is the commodity prices went down because of your domestic deflationary policies, your interest rates. But all of this can be worked out, and so it has been agreed. Secretary Reagan of the Treasury is going to meet with our foreign minister, who is also prime minister, regularly. The next meeting is next November, I think. So we have worked that out. The national security matters will be worked out by the defense minister. The two defense ministers are also meeting in November. Those are the specific ones. We have also entered into a tax agreement and air agreement. This afternoon, tomorrow, there will be some kind of agricultural agreement. As you know, we have one of the most modern and biggest concentration of agricultural and natural scientists in Asia. This is in Los Baños, the University of the Philippines. And we have biogenetics, we have plant engineering, we have, name it. You remember that the International Rice and Research Institute is based there, and that it was the one that produced the new type of rice which produced the rice green revolution. And we help your scientists produce the corn that can fight mildew. When your scientists could not produce it, we did. That center is going to be developed. We are also hoping to be able to exchange technology on non-conventional energy and other matters.
It has been reported that your government will seek $2 billion in rent from the U.S. for the Philippine bases. Is this an accurate report?
No, it is not. We have never talked about figures.
Louder and clearer. We can understand the question.
The question was, is it correct that we have demanded $2 billion in the rent? The answer is no. We haven't quoted any figure. What we have asked is this. We want a study. What is it that is necessary in order that we can perform our job? You and I know that if the Philippines is attacked, the United States is not necessarily bound to immediately react, because the provision of the Mutual Defense Pact is that you will immediately take steps as is necessary to meet the contingency in accordance with your constitutional processes. What does that mean? That means that you go to the Senate and the House of Representatives. What does that mean? That means delay while we are dying there.
Most of our allies in Europe, concerned about resisting communism, give the U.S. free bases and even share the cost. Why shouldn't we expect the same kind of cooperation from the Philippines instead of demands for more rent?
Well, for one thing, you haven't exactly paid for what we lost in the last war. If we must make an accounting, 75% of our cities were devastated in the last war. We lost 1 million men. Shall I quote you the statements of Roosevelt and MacArthur, that every Carabao will be paid for? Shall I tell you that the veterans who were inducted into the USAFE, the United States Armed Forces of the Philippines, of the Far East, your armed forces, were paid only 1/2 the salary of your soldiers? Shall I tell you that we almost turned communists because you refused to recognize us? Shall I tell you that I had a difficult time stopping my guerrillas, 25,000 of them from joining the communists, because precisely you sort of forgot that we had done the fighting for you, you know, and we were parts of your armed forces. But in fairness to the American Congress, when we came here and we called attention to the fact that we had been abandoned and forgotten, they themselves, in outrage, immediately passed a law recognizing the services of the Filipino and reinstating them as parts of the United States Armed Forces in the Far East, including back pay and benefits. That, Madam President, is the answer, in addition to the fact that those people that you are talking about have been making money at the expense of the United States for quite a long time, while we have not.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, U.S. bases in the Philippines could not be defended. Why should we expect that in another war these bases would be more reliable?
That's one of the questions that I wanted to find out. If you're going to run out on us anyway, you better let us know now.
Is it true President Reagan has not raised with you any concern about repression and human rights?
Well, he sort of spoke of the fact that we have all this constitutional provision. But we did speak of the fact that we must maintain and enhance human rights in general. But this fault finding that we found in some of these reports before isn't there. There is this open-mindedness and fairness which we expected of America and the Americans. The Americans that I know, the Americans who fought beside me, the Americans who bled with me in many a battlefield, was a fair man. He was a just man. He was a courageous man. He was a man who saw right and did right. And it is not fair to accuse the Philippines of any violation of human rights when there has been no violation. Though if there has been any violation, we punish those who have violated. And I now ask that this particular writing of one of the most celebrated figures, who claims to have, at the beginning of the campaign against my government, claims to have been maltreated by some of the military men, now reports exactly what happened. I ask that my staff distribute the letter of Herrera, Trinidad Herrera.
You have indicated that the allegations about political repression and human rights are overblown. How then do you explain the findings of the international independent group Amnesty International, which documented cases of torture, disappearances, and illegal detention?
Well, I'll tell you that the Amnesty International has never come to the Philippines. That's why all they talk about is something that they obtained hearsay. Let's give one specific example. Father Abedicio, a famous case. Father Abedicio is supposed to have disappeared. He is a member of the clergy in the Philippines. He's a Filipino. He disappeared and we couldn't locate him. Not even my best intelligence officers could locate him. And what did we discover after 6 months? We discovered he had run away with somebody who claimed to be a nun, and he was in Germany. How do you like that? And we got blamed for it. We got blamed for it. That's it. That's how the Amnesty International has been reporting all this thing.
This questioner says, I have been in Manila and talked with both Filipino and U.S. businessmen. They say the Philippines are the most corrupt nation in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and that your wife's nickname is Miss 10%. Will you comment?
They must mistake us for another nation. He must have been living in the bar. Because I can tell you, there is this man, Justice Pamaran, whom I just introduced to you. He is the ombudsman. You who know what an ombudsman is, knows exactly what he can do. He doesn't wait for evidence. Any rumor whatsoever, and he investigates it. You talk about my wife. Not that I would like to defend her. She can defend herself any time. She's quite capable. But perhaps that statement was said of another First Lady, not my wife. Certainly not my wife. Perhaps I can tell you that the property of the Marcoses has been brought into a blind trust. And not a 2020 blind trust either. It's a real blind trust. And we don't know exactly how that blind trust operates the property. The only property that we have control of are two or three houses, one in the province of Ilocos Norte, no, two in the province of Leyte, and one in Manila, 5. Then the schooling for the children, up to possibly a doctorate. Beyond that, all income goes into the Marcos Foundation, which is the foundation that embraces all property. Do you think that if there was any corruption by the Marcos family, that we can maintain the present prestige and leadership of the Marcoses in the Philippines? What do you think the Filipinos are? They are a very literate people. Literacy in the Philippines has increased up to 90% nationwide, and in Manila it is 100% literacy. And if there was any indication whatsoever of any of these corruption that you talk about, and whoever said that sounds like he has been in the wrong company. Probably the guys that he was working with may have been engaged in corruption. I'd like to know who they are. Then we'll go after them. But I can assure you, if any public official engages in corruption, he will land in jail. That is definite.
What do you say to critics who say your health is poor and you won't be around very long, but your wife may be?
Anybody want to try me in the ring? Yeah, that's ridiculous. I refuse to answer questions like that.
Two related questions. You are indeed a family man. Your wife, your daughter, your brothers are all government officials. Do you think the next president of your country will be a Marcos, and would you like for your wife to succeed you as president?
No. The problem here, of course, is that one, you do not understand the Philippine politics. You see, first of all, my brother, did you say my brother was governor?
Government officials.
My brother volunteered his services for Medicare. Did you want him to withdraw his voluntary services as a medical officer? He is serving our country practically free. He abandoned a very profitable medical career in order to serve what we have as Medicare, which is your Medicaid, no? Yes. He is not a government official by any means. This is a voluntary organization. My wife was elected. He was elected because the candidates wanted to include him, to include her. They wanted somebody to carry them. Minister Romulo will tell you that without the support of the governor, who happens to be well liked by the people of Manila, they probably wouldn't have won in the last elections. It's just a matter of helping out in the political campaign. My daughter is the voluntary head of a group of village leaders. That is not a political organization. That's not a government organization. This is an association of young kids who are organized in order that they can help each other. Kabataan Barangay. And I am surprised that you hold it against these young kids, that they get together so they can play football, they can encourage sports, they can encourage the young kids from going into drugs. Don't you think that you should also organize something here in the United States and get somebody to stop the young kids from going into drugs and instead go into sports? Well, that's what they're doing. Now, with respect to the other officials, the question, of course, doesn't specify. Let me put it this way. As I told you, our government is a caucus government, consensus. When the consensus of the party demanded that I appoint the First Lady as a member of the Executive Committee, I had an agreement with them, and that is that she would not become President or Prime Minister. At the beginning, even Prime Minister Cesar Virata was for the First Lady becoming Prime Minister. But the First Lady and I stood our ground, and we nominated the Prime Minister Virata instead. Now, is that the action of anybody who is preparing to take over as a dynasty? Now, my other daughter, well, she is in Pennsylvania. She's studying voice culture, and she is in anthropology. I don't see what connection that has with politics.
Mr. President, your opponents say this trip is costing between $5 million and $20 million. What is the budget for your trip?
It's ridiculous. My cabinet is spending only a very minuscule part of that. If there are any people who have joined this group, they are on their own. I'm sorry to say. They're on their own.
Do you believe the United States now has a consistent, understandable policy toward the Philippines and East Asia?
Shouldn't you ask that of the United States leaders, not me? But as far as I'm concerned, yes, insofar as we can understand. What I see is a resurgent American nation under a new leadership, trying its very best, earnestly trying to arrest decline and slide in prestige and in policy, in domestic and foreign policy. That is what we see from the outside. There is an earnest effort to prevent drift and confusion. Now, we would like to encourage that because among the small nations, there's no possibility of any progress so long as there is instability throughout the world. And so, as I said last night, what I see now, 16 years after my last visit, actually my last visit was when I came to participate in the memorial services of President Eisenhower in 1969. Not 1966, 1969. And, but what I see here is while in the past America was in the dark, and there were doubts and misgivings. There were fears that you were tiring, you were weary, you doubted your own strength, you didn't know where you were going. But now there is hope, and the phenomenon is what we see is an America emerging out of the shadows, It's still partly in the shadows, but it's trying to emerge. And certainly under the leadership of President Reagan, it's trying to organize an integrated, understandable foreign policy. And that's what we see.
There is widespread malnutrition in the Philippines, and only 1/3 of your labor force has regular employment. Given this, how do you justify the prosperity in which you, your family, and friends live?
You must like us, the way you ask those questions. Anyway, I don't know where you get your figures, but the unemployment figure in the Philippines is 4%. I don't know what's yours. I do know what's yours. But have you heard of the KKK, not the Ku Klux Klan, but we have a program which harnesses the energies of those who are half employed, like those who are in the farms. You see, those who wait for the coconuts to fall or who plant rice are partly employed. And so we allow them to engage in what we call small, medium-scale industries, contract work. Where, in what country do you see, say, a boot block? A boot block. Go to a rural bank and say, look, I used to borrow money from this usurious lender here. I borrow 5 pesos in the morning, I have to pay him 6 pesos in the afternoon. Can't you lend me 50 pesos now and I will repay you later on? I have no collateral, I am unknown, I live in the streets. And in what country will you see the rural bank lend this boot block money after looking at his shoe shine stand and gathering all the other shoe shine boys and putting them to work and getting them to repay this indebtedness, not in a week, but perhaps even in a day? Or fishermen who live a hand-to-mouth existence. Even here, in your prosperous United States, can a poor fisherman go to a bank and borrow money on his name, on his signature? He cannot. But here in the Philippines, he can. A poor fisherman can go to the bank and say, look, I live in so-and-so, and the chairman of my village can certify that I am a poor fisherman. And I would like to organize a group. Can you lend us 5,000 so I can buy a motor, I can buy a net, I can buy a small boat, and we can improve our earnings. And under our laws, we have set aside funds which then are lent out. And we have been able to lend out about 1,200,000,000 pesos under this scheme, and they have been repaid. They have been repaid, and that's the worst part about it, isn't it? Many people don't believe it, but they have been repaid. And so we have a situation where the work ethic has been encouraged. We tell everybody, you don't plant rice, you don't eat rice. You don't work, you don't get anything. But you work. We'll give you the wherewithal. We'll give you the funds. We'll teach you how to work if necessary. And we will see to it that we will sell your products. That's what's happening in the countryside. Not all this talk about corruption and this ridiculous statements about people in government enriching themselves. When you have activists like Luis Tarok and Jerry Montemayor and Nilo Tayag and these men who were ready to kill the president, but who now says that the reforms that are being instituted are for the good and welfare of the country, you don't engage in any of this foolishness that you talk about. No, everybody is sincere and earnest about making our democracy work. And I can tell you that whoever has told you about these unwholesome observations about the Philippines, better come back to the Philippines. I'll pay for your trip so you can see what's actually happening.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I ask our final question, I want to present you with a certificate of appreciation for appearing once again at the National Press Club and with an updated version of the National Press Club necktie.
Thank you.
And now our last question. Is it really true, as your biography states, that you were born in a thunderstorm?
How should I know? But my mother says so,
Hey
yes.
there.
My mother
Subscribe to
says
my
so, I
channel.
guess
And
if
also
you can't
press
believe
this
your
bell
mother,
icon.
whom will you believe, huh?